Hello and welcome to our game here on Thursday. This is the Patreon show. The first 15 minutes or so will be available for free, and after that you'll have to go to patreon.com/ourgame. Just a £5 a month, absolutely great value there. I'm joined by Fintan O'Toole of the 42. How are you doing, Fintan?
Very good, Shane. And yourself?
Sure, I'm flying it. There's some amount of stuff going on this week, but I suppose before we get to that, I just want to remind people on September the 16th in UCD, we're going to have a coaching clinic with our game. Matty Kenny, Kieran Carey and Martin Fogarty, they're going to be doing practical on-field sessions for all coaches of all levels, whether it's hurling or camogie. So do sign up to that. You'll find a link anywhere there on my Twitter page at Shane Saint or on the OurGame HQ on Twitter. So Fintan, I suppose there's no place to start other than the scenes that were in Roscommon on Wednesday night. It's not particularly pretty. Obviously, the video doesn't fully show what happens, but we'll have a quick look at it here anyway, because we know that there's an investigation underway. You know, we can see it here. Obviously, this is a minor match in Roscommon, and there's plenty going on. There's people on the pitch, and all of a sudden the referee's just panned out there. So there is an investigation underway, and an ambulance had to be called, and the match was abandoned. So, Fintan, I mean, we can't draw too many conclusions from the video because you can't, see exactly what happened there. Certain clips seems to be edited out, or maybe it was missed by the video. But either way, at an underage game, to see it being abandoned is very, very nasty stuff, because it's obviously not the message that people want sent out.
Yeah, absolutely. You have to be careful with these things because there are a couple of different social media clips going around out of this. And there's obviously a lot of social media clips going around over the years over these sort of things. So, I mean, kind of dealing with the facts of the matter, I was actually on to Roscommon County Board this morning. So, the statement they gave me was that they were aware of an incident involving a ref in an underage match in Ballyforan. They would like to wish the referee involved a speedy recovery, and they strongly condemn any behaviour that puts any of our match officials at risk. And the CCC will commence a full investigation into the incident. So, just even those bare facts alone that they've given, the fact that there's an investigation into it, the fact that they're saying that wishing the referee a speedy recovery, that any ref going out to ref any game at any level, anywhere in the country, that in any sport, you have to have a situation where the fixture makers are wishing a speedy recovery. I mean, more than a player or anyone involved in a game, you just want them to walk off the pitch, get back into the car, head home. You don't want anyone to be kind of having to receive medical attention, let alone somebody who's basically just in charge of officiating a game. The fact that it's an underage match as well, I think that probably adds to it a little bit more. We don't know anything more, I suppose, kind of concrete about the incident, Shane. But again, this, I think, I kind of said to you, I think on Monday's show, that this is just the time of year where it just always seems to happen. And this is just an example of a wider issue in the GAA, where we probably get to a time of year where I suppose tensions are raised and the stakes are heightened at matches. And I understand that there's a lot of kind of different emotions at play, but the reactions and obviously the behaviour when these sort of incidents occur are just unacceptable, So we just kind of wait and see kind of what's going to happen. But the kind of sad reality of it is that this is unlikely to be the last incident this year, and it is one of those as well in a wider sense that it does happen every year, that it just commands wider attention. Obviously we're in sports media and we're kind of mainly dealing with GA here at the moment, but these sort of incidents do kind of move outside of that kind of media bubble and do kind of garner greater attention. And it is an issue the GA kind of find themselves kind of tackling every autumn and winter, it seems, at this time of year.
Yeah, I remember the one that happened in Wicklow last year. I mean, there was a video circulating of that, and I cut out the video and put it up again, and it was like a huge response to that video. So it just shows there's a wide something brilliant could happen in Club GAA, and you might get a bit of a reaction. But then if there's a row, everyone in the country is happy to see it, whether they're into GAA or not. So it does kind of draw that negative attention. A lot of the time, the problem too is at club level, there's these interpersonal relationships going on between, a referee in one town might know a person in another town. There might be a problem between them. Like at inter-county level, that's not happening so much because someone from another province will generally be refereeing a match that two counties are involved in. And yeah, they might know each other from the scene and, being involved in the same in matches over the years. But there's interpersonal relationships across the board, especially also at underage matches. My little Tommy and my little Sally, playing in matches as well. Things get very heightened. So I think club is the place that this stuff can really kick off. So, I mean, it's unavoidable. This kind of stuff is going to continue, but the only thing you can do is really have harsh bans when stuff like that happens. I suppose, but just to move on, there's a couple other sort of overarching topics before we really get into the club stuff. The Monaghan job looks like, Ger Brennan is someone that's certainly been spoken to by Monaghan. Then Donegal, Malachy O'Rourke apparently won't be taking the job. That's the story going in the Donegal news. But who is going to take over from Declan Bonner? Because there's no real obvious successor at the moment.
Yeah, I suppose it's interesting. You look at today's date, Shane, 1st September. This, like, usually by this time of year, you're grand. You have loads of time to kind of get sorted with these sort of things, when it comes to appointing a county manager. But knock-on effect of a shorter season is that around this time of year, by this stage of the season, with how many weeks the All-Ireland is over, about 6 weeks, both of these counties are out of the championship since June, aren't they? Yeah, both of them would have been out then, So I suppose trying to figure out the timeline of when their managers would have departed, but it is a little bit messy for them and a little bit kind of, we talked the last week about in the hurling sense. We looked at examples where, when the stuff was announced, I suppose when Cork and Tip got rid of their hurling managers, for example, or there was a change in their hurling managers, and then new guys came in. That was a pretty quick turnaround. Kilkenny, but every year there are some counties that it does seem to kind of drag on a little bit, and I would imagine that in Ulster, you're looking around at counties. You're looking at Mayo, for example, very close to them having their business done. You're looking at Kieran McGuinness still on Armagh. You're looking at Laverty getting the job and down, and there's a bit of both counties are a little bit similar in the sense that maybe a little bit unfulfilled potential, a little bit of kind of frustration, disappointment. Obviously, Monaghan got to an All-Ireland semi in 2018. Donegal haven't been able to break that barrier, and there was a kind of succession of really kind of big games, a lot of progress and a lot of great players, obviously, but a lot of kind of disappointment. And I think a lot of it, talking to supporters, O'Rourke was definitely the fans' favourite with all the work he'd done. First of all in Fermanagh, then obviously in Monaghan, even doing something like being the man that finally gets Watty Graham's a really well touted side in Derry, that he's the one that gets them over the line when it comes to it in the county championship. It seemed like a good fit, I suppose, geographically in terms of wouldn't being too far away, but it hasn't happened now. And as well as that, I suppose every time that this happens, the natural talk is Jim McGuinness will take it, but it doesn't seem like Jim McGuinness GA is really his focus at the moment. He's still kind of focused on that the soccer journey, I think, as he's kind of said. Remember listening to him in a podcast with Thomas O'Shea a couple of months ago talking about that, and that seems to be his focus. So, Martin McHugh was kind of talked about, I suppose, gets in these situations, but it doesn't seem like there's any kind of club nominations. So there's a lot of kind of uncertainty as regards their process, and they seem a bit kind of further back the road. The Monaghan one then was pretty interesting in the sense that the story, I think it was Carol O'Kane had it in the Irish News, that there was 3 candidates in the frame. Brendan Hackett, Mark Coonahan, the minor manager, and Jason Sherlock obviously being the other one, but through a combination of not getting the job and candidates pulling out by the end of the weekend, I think they started the weekend with 3 candidates and ended up with none, but Brendan then, it's a pretty big job for him to take on. He has a pretty decent track record in terms of obviously his playing career. He's been exposed at the highest level. He's not that long out of it. He played for a very, very high achieving club. Involvement with Carlow,
UCD involvement,
UCD GA officer, Moorfield, a lot of different boxes to be ticked, but it is a big, big kind of step. It'll be interesting to see what he goes in there. I suppose one name that was touted with Sherlock, and you wonder would Brennan get him as well as an obvious guy to get in, would be maybe Kevin Nolan, who's obviously living in Monaghan now for a good while, will be a former teammate of Brennan's. But after that, the same principles apply that we were talking about on Monday. It's like, right, you're the manager. Now tell me who's your coach, who's your coaches, I guess, who's your S&C coach, who's your stats and analysis. Like, it's basically what's your team around me, what's the team going to be around you. But what
are you going to do for sponsorship? I mean, there's
all
so much
that kind of stuff. Yeah. But it is, it's very interesting for a guy like that to take on a consistent top 8 county. They've consistently managed to survive in Division 1 repeatedly. Okay, it's been close on a couple of occasions, but I guess from their point of view, at least they are looks like close to kind of rubber stamping it. But the Donegal one, that's a fair bit of uncertainty now as regards who will kind of take it.
Yeah, and if Ger Brennan does take over the Monaghan job, it would be quite in contrast with what we've seen at the likes of Mayo and I suppose Meath with Colm O'Rourke and Kevin McStay, men who've been around the block for a long, long time. Obviously, everyone knows them for the punditry. Then if Martin McHugh, like you said, if he ended up being the 3-man committee ended up approaching Martin McHugh and he took over, maybe 28 years or something after he didn't get the job, obviously went on to manage Cavan and has been involved in other levels as well. He would fall into more the McStay and O'Rourke bracket. And then it's just interesting that you have the two ends of the spectrum there, and obviously you have everything in between as well. But just for these management jobs, and would you rather be going in as the young man, or maybe someone who's more retired and has that time, like we were talking the other day? Just a couple other points to bring up. Kerry will be without Jack Savage for the All-Ireland defence next year. He's going to be away. And James McCarthy was talking this week that he's delighted that Desi Farrell is staying on for 2 more years. And one other thing is that Colin O'Riordan has had to retire from the AFL due to a hip injury. And I wonder, is it one of these things where, I mean, we don't know yet if he's going to come back to Ireland or not, but you just wonder, is his body not quite able for the rigours of AFL, but he could potentially come back and play club or county for Tipperary? So that would be an interesting one to keep an eye on, Fintan.
Yeah, I think that is a prospect that hasn't been ruled out, and it was pretty telling when I saw the statement first of all that he's retiring from AFL as opposed to, you know, retiring from sport and at 26 kind of deciding kind of that was it. You know, talking to players that have been there over the years, it is a different type of an impact on your body with the type of endurance required and the kind of speed, and obviously the increase. Look, you know, getting football and hurling are physical sports, but there's obviously an increased kind of a physical nature to AFL in terms of the kind of hits you're getting on your body and that kind of thing, you know. So I don't think the door is closed. You know, Morris Brosnan, my colleague with 42, was chatting to David Power during the week, and like David Power seems to be constantly in contact with her, and obviously there's such a long running relationship from bringing him in as a 15-year-old in the 2011 minor to the senior and under 20, and he was kind of saying, yeah, the door isn't closed, but I think off the pitch for the time being, he is going to take some time in Australia, which I think is probably a sensible thing. You know, it's a very difficult and hard emotional thing to process. He put up a very nice kind of Instagram post, I think, outlining his thanks to everyone that's done it. But I'd say it's a lot to kind of take in, even though I think from what I understand, this, you know, it wasn't like a sudden sharp shock injury. You know, he's had a lot of difficulties over the last while, so there's probably been a gradual kind of maybe sense of this, that maybe this was coming for him. But yeah, maybe it's kind of a good thing to kind of process and kind of get used to. Just actually on the other end of the spectrum, the AFL, probably just the news this morning, the finals start this weekend in the AFL. And so Zach Toohey is starting for, he's been able to start for Geelong on Saturday and they're against Collingwood. Like, but just the numbers again, like, so this will be his 248th AFL appearance. So 2 games away from that 250 mark. And he's now, I think Jim Steins is on 264. So he's not going to break it this season, but like, in terms of kind of keeping yourself fit and all that. And I just think that he is, and I understand it's a very, very niche sport. And maybe, look, it's not one I follow week in, week out. I kind of keep an eye on the Irish guys and watch the finals and all that. Like, but I just think his success story as an Irish sports person abroad is probably one of the most underappreciated in the country. I mean, the numbers, you know, and like Colin O'Riordan getting to 36 games was a very, very big achievement considering the players. But like, you know, he's managed to rack up like 7 times that. Like, it's just staggering. And I don't know, are we going to see another guy maybe approach that level of kind of consistency? And one thing on the injury front is interesting. I remember doing a piece on him before the 2020 grand final, and I was chatting to a couple of people, Kieran Sheehan, who played in McCartan, and he was just saying like his ability to stay injury free, there's a bit of fortune to it, of course, but a lot of it is down to the way he gets himself right for every pre-season and the work he kind of puts in. And it'd be great to see him, I think, maybe get he's been trying very hard to kind of get an AFL Premiership medal. Obviously, Ty Kennelly the only one, but it'd be pretty great to see him manage to do it. Mark O'Connor not named to start this weekend, but he's obviously still in the frame as well. And then obviously the rumours this week, if they are linked to them, Geelong have been one of the clubs linked with Conor McKenna, whether that happens to pass or not. But that would be some Irish trio in 2023 if the 3 of them were all together.
Yeah, absolutely. And just when you mentioned Colin O'Riordan there, if he comes back, he's ready. Like, it's Calais is his club in Tipperary. It's not Brackens. He was back with Calais. They don't have a football team, but they do have a hurling team. So it'd be interesting to see, does he end up playing football with Brackens? You know, and this is assuming he's all fit. So there's just an awful lot to be kind of figured out there. Delighted to say we're joined now by David Connors of the Tuam Hurl. David, how are you?
Good, lads, and yourselves?
Hi, David.
No, we're the finest. Now, we have so much to talk about heading into the weekend, David, but I suppose we want to talk to you about the Galway Senior Hurling Championship. But before we get to that, the situation with Shane Walsh, he may end up making his debut this weekend for Kilmacud Crokes against Temple Oak, Sing Street. Are people in Galway, I mean, obviously his club, Kilkerran Clonberne, they would obviously be quite upset to see him leave, but are people in Galway in general unhappy about this, or what's the mood about it?
I don't think so, to be honest with you. From just even looking at social media posts and things like that, most of the the comments and seem to be in support of Shane and, you know, wishing him well and all the best. And I suppose, like, when you reflect on it, like, he's given 19, 20 years to Kilkerran Clonberne. He's been in a couple of intermediate finals with them, and, you know, thinks that they was even in an intermediate final a couple of years ago. I don't think so. I think by and large, you know, people are supportive, particularly, you know, particularly after, you know, what he delivered for Galway last year. And I suppose the selfish nature of the Galway supporters might be that they, you know, they want to keep his body as in prime condition as possible, you know, for Galway for as long as possible. So if that means Kilkerran Clonberne perhaps have to suffer for a while, maybe so be it.
Yeah, the only thing I'd wonder is if he has an extended run with Kilmacud Crokes this year, and considering Paul Mannion is to come back, he might find himself playing all the way to the very end of the year and then have to go straight back in with Galway and not get much of a break. So we'll see how that goes.
Yeah.
We're going to switch over to patreon.com/OurGame, but just once more a reminder, we've got the coaching clinic coming up in UCD. Learn so you can teach. Any aspiring coach in hurling or camogie, this would be a great one to go for. Martin Fogarty, Kieran Carey and Matty Kenny are going to be there doing their own sessions and showing you on-pitch drills. So it's a very practical session there. So join us over at patreon.com/OurGame if you want to see the rest of this show. For more exclusive content, go to patreon.com/OurGame.